Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time. And there are many ways that celebrities may immortalize themselves in popular culture. Maybe they pioneered a defining industry. Maybe they released a series of critically acclaimed albums. Or maybe they died young. I know that was a bit of an abrupt segue, but there is a morbid fascination we have with celebrities who didn't necessarily bow out in the most graceful fashion. When someone with such great potential and apparent success is victim to the tragedy of a premature demise, particularly those of artificial sorts, we're left thinking about what might have been for that individual. And we're also encouraged to reflect on the industry that may have manufactured such an outcome. Now make no mistake, some of these individuals were incredibly prolific regardless of their death. And you don't want to overstate their death as if to take away from their artistic contribution. But when someone passes away, that contribution is often frozen in that moment, and we are drawn to the attention of what that death has taken away from us as individuals. A really great example of that was Stefán Karl Stefánsson, the guy who played Robbie Rotten, and provided me and many others with the numerous memes that yielded from We Are Number One. His diagnosis, recovery, relapse, and eventual death was an emotional rollercoaster that many people were on all the way, but his death reflected something else. Because we were there throughout the situation, we had time to provide our support to someone we loved. Popular individuals dying prematurely is not the most common event, and often what is even rarer is being able to foresee the possibility of that death, as many people don't go public about it. And therefore the journey to that destination is often a fight we want to be there for. There's an emotional battle that gives us purpose, to know that we might make a difference in that battle. Therefore, it was natural that when people found out that today's subjects were dying, they wanted to show their support. Who are those subjects? Well, they are a pair of YouTubers by the name of XtremeGamez, the Australian brothers of Thomas and Jonathan, who do what you want to see, have fun, play games, and chill. They describe their content family-friendly and kid-friendly, and in their 5 years on YouTube, they've built up a fairly sturdy subscriber count of 4.24 million, and over 314 million views. Pretty impressive. Where did those views come from? Well, who remembers Pro Gamer J? No one? Well, let me refresh your memory. A couple years back, he was the punching bag for many commentators who found his content a bit, well, laughable. He was notorious for rather misleading, albeit amusing clickbait. His most well-known was a video that was titled, "If you see red, then you are colorblind," or words to that effect, as he has changed it since then, the cheeky bugger. However, although many people picked on him, maybe due to his delivery, he was part of a greater trend that was represented by multiple creators, even to this day, that rated the power of leading your audience to believe that they were doing something with higher stakes than what actually happened in the video. Now, with that said, a lot of these channels specialized in various areas of clickbait. There was obviously a significant amount of overlap, but they all occupied various corners. Honestly, these videos should have died out much faster than they did, but some have in fact persisted. The ones who have either grew into the creative maestros such as Mr. Beast, who actually follow through on their clickbait, or a level of uninspired irony that I and other audiences appear still to be attempting to understand, such as Morks.
Guys, I'm so close, but I'm just not sure what the item is. What could come after B-O-O? Wait a minute! Book! I guess the letter K! Guys, what could that final letter be? A math book, a mal book, a mad book, a MacBook.
However, many of these creators also lost a lot of traction. With the introduction of corporate channels like Brightside, who can just pump out these dire informational videos on a regular basis, many individual creators realized that they couldn't compete, and only channels who were doing things that weren't just based on clickbait managed to survive. XtremeGamez were one of the channels that appear to have gained most of their prominence off this trend initially. Although they clearly had some presence prior to 2 years ago, this is the only content that really is still accessible on their channel. In fact, one of the things that I found while researching their videos is that they remove them at an unbelievably high rate. However, like many channels around this time, XtremeGamez were the victim to the demise of that brand of content. XtremeGamez at their peak seemed to specialize in Nerf gun mods, DIY fidget spinners, and DIY Nerf guns. Basically mixing and matching various trends at that point. Now, there's been worse clickbait, to be honest, but it became very clear that people were not going to be won over by the concept of lava fidget spinners forever. And eventually their views began to fall. Like many channels that coasted on the clickbait rather than the content, people did not stick around when those topics lost their charm. It didn't help they were not the most charismatic of individuals.
That is literally an apple fidget spinner.
Oh man, we just made a fidget spinner out of an apple.
And the cool thing is, if you're hungry, you can just take a bite.
Who would have honestly thought that? Ever.
That is so cool.
Basically, they just couldn't maintain the brilliant momentum that they once had. However, on the horizon, something much more sinister was brewing, a tragedy about to befall both characters involved in this compelling tale. They were going to face down a challenge much worse than a dead channel: death itself.
This is the end.
They were in the fight for their life, and their fan base was right behind them. They needed that support more desperately than anything they needed before. The tale was of two brothers who were facing down their own life-threatening illnesses. Jonathan suffering from a kidney problem, and Thomas suffering from severe vertigo. However, very soon a few voices of skepticism arose that stated that not everything was as it seemed.
Now, as far as making shitty clickbaity content goes, I could care less. I mean, there's millions of people that do this on the internet, and I say get that money. More power to you. But the second you start pretending you're dying in order to get clicks and views after your channel's kind of suffering and not performing as well as it used to, well, that's when I start to just raise a little eyebrow to that. Now, this isn't...
Join me today as I look into the story of XtremeGamez and what led them to one of the most bizarre creator meltdowns in the last year, and see if we can diagnose the real problem. Are you ready? Good. I know I am. Let us commence. A channel that has 4.2 million subscribers. They couldn't have obtained that overnight. Well, they didn't. In spite of the fact that most of their content wasn't online anymore, I have been able to create a somewhat accurate timeline of the progress of their channel and what it says about them as creators. It's quite incredible, actually, the lack of public record of their content. Despite the monumental statistics, the actual documented content is rather scarce. One of the things that I found was that no one seems to screenshot their content, and that made it very hard to find archived versions. In fact, this video would not exist if it hadn't been for Leon Lush's archivings of their videos about their illnesses. So I wanted to extend my sincerest gratitude to him. However, fortunately, because I am a tenacious bastard, the one thing that XtremeGamez did not do was clear their Twitter history, and this is where it becomes quite spicy. Now, what do we know? We know that XtremeGamez were formed in around 2014, mid-2014. Now, we don't know exactly what they were doing back then, however, fortunately their Twitter is pretty much untouched, so we know the sort of content that they were tweeting. Now, I want to have a quick trivia game, because you all know how much I love quizzes. Today's £1 million question is, what sort of channel did XtremeGamez brand themselves as in 2015? Your options are a Clash of Clans gaming channel or a free giveaway channel. If you answered A or B, you'd only be half right, because it was both. In fact, they really love to tell you that they were doing free giveaways for Clash of Clans accounts. I really do feel bad for anyone who was tagged in their insipid tweets, telling them to make sure they like and subscribe so they're in with a chance to win an epic Clash of Clans account. However, maybe they did have a legitimate passion for this Clash of Clans content, because in rare footage of them with Fangs plays, they informed the audience that they were actually top 10 at one point.
And so these guys right here are pretty much badasses at Clash Royale. Y'all are number 10 in the world at some point, or you still are?
Yes, we were at some point, but we're still pretty high up there at the moment.
Now, honestly, she seems more convinced than they do about this fun fact, but I don't know. It looks like they did reach the top 50 at a stage, so hey, it's not impossible. After all, why wouldn't I trust these XtremeGamez? Looking at their other tweets, they also said hello to some people with a couple of replies. Very productive conversation. Honestly, I can't imagine what living this life would be like, just tweeting at people, but hey, they were young, probably around 16 and 17, 18, and they were at that stage where they could learn and grow. So how do they evolve in the coming years? Well, it seems after hitting a few subscriber milestones, they spanned out. They did some different games with giveaways. They did some prank calls with giveaways. Honestly, they seemed to enjoy their giveaways. Even when they were making different content, they were still integrated with the giveaways. They also had what must have been the shortest Shoutout Sunday series, running from the 23rd of February 2016 to the 23rd of February 2016. I hope that someone got their shoutout. Ultimately, their mentality represented a time where people were just so obsessed with subscriber counts and the short-term gain that could be obtained by having a nice number next to your name. There was more value than actually constructing a channel for which people would stick around for. Most of these giveaways were presented with the commitment that you needed to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, beyond the fact that a person could not see who has liked their videos unless they went on their channel and looked at their playlists, and they would have to have a public playlist of liked videos, it's also the same pretty much with subscriptions. They would have to have their subscriptions public. They could, in all fairness, look at who subscribed to them in their subscriber list. However, that's only people who make their subscriptions public. At this stage, a fair majority of giveaways were absolute codswallop, and although I cannot comment on the legitimacy of these specific ones, I highly doubt they were real. Given that I highly doubt they were making much money when they started, the volume of these giveaways was such that unless they were already oil barons, I highly doubt they have the budget. With that said, at the start there were a fair few people who did claim to win, and they did seem to announce winners as well, even in later videos. Although once again my point about their flawed methodology still persists, and just because there were some winners or some announced winners doesn't mean that every single giveaway was legitimate. There may be people who've claimed to give away things to winners, but that not be the case. They also did some streaming on Camcord at this time, but that site's defunct, so that's another one lost to the vaults, unfortunately. Now, with that said, given the topic and given their competence with the topic, they did acquire a sturdy fan base. However, it clearly wasn't good enough for them. The pooled audience for Clash of Clans is pretty restricted. There are some popular channels, but you're not going to have a plethora of them. And with gamers as extreme as Tom and John, they knew they could easily adapt with the changing environment. So they did. But what was the big thing at the time around 2016? Well, it was Pokemon Go. So what did they do? They rebranded to XtremeGamez Pokemon Go. That was literally the name of their channel, and quickly began to churn out content catered to that audience, of which back in 2016 there was a lot of desire for. There was hesitant success when they started this content in July, but by August they were attaining subscribers at a rate not seen before. What I assume made their content particularly successful alongside the topic choice was the giveaways.
And it's gonna be amazing. Before we get into this video, guys, we want to quickly run you through our huge giveaways that we're doing, guys. The first step to enter our Pokemon Go level 30 account giveaways is, guys, you gotta like this video. We're trying to hit 10,000 likes on this video, so every single person watching this video, go down below and smash that like button. It is one of the biggest steps to enter into this giveaway.
Giveaways back then were basically pasted at the start of videos by these creators. What this would do is catch audiences who may not otherwise watch the whole video and persuade them to subscribe, so that in the future when you upload it, there would be a higher probability of them viewing your content. At first, I didn't think this observation was particularly consequential. However, I do want you to keep this in mind for their future content. Combined with already high viewership, this turned over a high subscriber rate for the lads, and by the end of 2016, they hit 200,000 subscribers. At first, it seemed bizarre to me that people would inundate their audience with that level of giveaways. They're obviously not real, and all you're doing is creating a load of dormant subscribers who will desert you. But then it hit me, and it hit me hard. XtremeGamez ran a very interesting project on the surface because they weren't just empty shells of people. They clearly have souls and activities that they enjoy. However, they were also rather unexceptional in their personality. If someone was asked what made their content, they would probably hesitate to provide an answer. Because at first, the giveaway seemed to just be a vacuous inclusion to increase subscriber count, which they are. Let me emphasize that, of course, cannot be ignored. However, after some brooding, I came to the conclusion that it was actually the giveaways that also gave them such a staying power. Creators like Derv were only known for their giveaways because otherwise their content provided nothing really of additional value. With XtremeGamez, their videos were mediocre, even tolerable at points. This ultimately meant that if people had an additional reason to watch their content, they normally would if it covered something that might have appealed to their interest. At the same time, they could enter whatever definitely legitimate giveaway the YouTuber was hosting and provide them with the view that they desired. On top of this, the fact that XtremeGamez always said they would announce the winner in future videos gave people a greater desire to watch those future videos to see if they could find out if they had won. So when they were making these Pokemon videos that were, from my perspective, equatable to FIFA opening packs, people would just find mild amusement from the content and then continue with their day. This also allowed the brothers to change genre of content fairly easily because although clearly existent, there wasn't an intense topic loyalty to what they covered. This meant that although they had created over 200,000 subscribers from Pokemon related content, a number that many Pokemon creators creators would never consider changing their content for, in the extreme world, it was rather elementary. They continued their Pokemon content well into 2017. However, at around February time, they started to seemingly mix it up a little. One of the first videos that appears to have been a real benchmark for this change was another private video called $1 Cake versus $870 Cake. At this point, they appeared to begin integrating some new types of videos, ones that didn't focus around just Pokemon, thus beginning the segue to eventually completely phase out Pokemon content altogether. The other video that I really want to note is one called How I Almost Died. Let's have a quick watch.
I take these every single day. Now, if you want to know why, make sure you watch this video all the way through and I will tell you why all these tablets need to be taken daily. Before we get into this video, guys, I want to quickly tell you guys we are holding some humongous giveaways, iTunes cards, Google Play cards, and much more.
Oh, another giveaway. So basically in this video, they describe Jonathan's dice with death and how it affected them over suitably emotional music.
So the kidney disease specialists actually checked my my urine and checked that there was actually a lot of protein in my urine and actually a lot of blood in my urine, which are two bad things. You don't want to have either of those in your urine, obviously. But yeah, those two bad things. So they gave me 3 options. They said option number 1 is you can get on Predicinal, which is a tablet that like really, I'll tell you guys a bit later, really is bad for you. Then there is another option where we could do nothing. That's one of the options. And then the third option was get a kidney biopsy to see exactly what I have.
It appears that Jonathan had a kidney condition that caused various symptoms and led him to be hospitalized. I can't necessarily completely comment on the validity of the story. What I can comment on is that it gave them 2 things: a lot of views and a lot of very sympathetic comments from individuals who identified with that struggle. A struggle that doesn't come easily, and a struggle often harder to open up about. Although the piano was a rather heavy-handed measure, many were prepared to look past it and see the humanity in the message, and to witness that struggle. Now, as said, I'm not one to doubt this story. The medicine that he's taking all checks out, and he seems to have reasonable knowledge of the condition, though it does enter suspicious territory at certain points.
I was awake the whole time.
He's not going to tell you the actual story. I'll tell you the actual story. This is the crazy, that's not the crazy part, because normally people would be like, okay, you can't see it, so you can't feel it, right? They put in a drug, they numb your back. This is the crazy part. Johnny here didn't get any numbing anything. So pretty much, he felt getting stabbed in the back multiple times. He didn't get any of the numbing drugs to numb his back. He wasn't asleep. He wasn't anything. He was just under there. And the doctor, when he came out, he said, this kid is the strongest kid I've ever seen. He said, I've seen fully grown adults do this with being numbed and still cry. And he did it without being numbed, and he was only, what, 15 at the time.
I'd personally be quite surprised if doctors were allowed to operate on someone without any anesthetic administered, and I'm still not sure why. But hey, I digress. Maybe he is just an extremely strong lad. There are some other interesting points, such as the information that membranous nephropathy is typically found in older adults, and the theory that maybe he took this story from a relative I'm sure has bounced around in people's minds. But that was too cynical for me. As said, there are sides to this story that seem to add up. So yes, this video received a lot of positive feedback and support from many people within the community, and it was also a video that came out just before a very successful run of uploads for the brothers. How consistently successful? Well, I can't say, because for all I know they've unlisted all the poorly performing ones. However, the ones that did do well, did very well. We're not just talking about 1 or 2 million views a video, we're talking 10 million plus videos. These videos were an eventual transition out of the Pokemon related content and represented a move to content more general. Many channels couldn't make this transition, but there were 2 factors that eased this. The first one we spoke about earlier. The other factor that was important to note was that this new type of content didn't necessarily alienate those who subscribe for Pokemon. Many people have been easily pulled in by these types of videos. They have a general appeal. They weren't necessarily moving from Pokemon to another specific game. They were moving to a more broad genre that could still catch a viewer's attention, regardless of that viewer's interests. In the moment, doing this made them incredibly successful, but they also took a critical hit to their staying power. Back when they made videos on specific games, they had the reassurance that their content was likely always going to appeal to a certain audience. This venture was like searching for treasure. It was either incredible amounts of success or no success at all. But when you keep looting the same island, the returns become diminished. And if you have no other islands to loot, then the voyages become repeatedly less and less fortuitous. And suddenly, all those previous voyages just don't seem so successful. How could that happen? Let's have a chat. Many of us have an understanding of what might make an audience view our content. Typically, the main aim is to keep people coming back. A subscription is an important component of that because it shows a commitment that will subsequently have a knock-on effect on the frequency that the individual sees our content in their feed. However, it's still only half the story. I feel the lads over at XtremeGamez did understand that and tried to use the anticipation yielded by multiple giveaways to have people stick around longer than they normally would. However, it was a fickle sense of brand loyalty, mainly because people become impatient when they don't win. And even if they were legitimately picking winners of these giveaways, the chances of winning became much lower the larger their channel became. By gaining subscribers from this method, they undermined their own appeal. The idea of giveaways are a nice inclusion here and there, but unless everyone legitimately believes they have a chance of winning, the subscribers and views that it provides is never substantial enough to justify the technique, mainly because many creators also understand that you need to have people invested in your content for the long term. They need to be invested in a part of you, the creator, which can be relied on. Giveaways can't be relied on by the viewer because they are almost completely chance-based. At the time for Tom and John, it may have been hard for them to notice this, behind the absolutely monumental views, but they were setting up a channel that would not survive. Their move to broad topics made them vulnerable to a changing of the tide with no real hook on the content, and their giveaways were undermined by the colossal size of the viewership and the alienation that came with that. Eventually, the views began to dwindle. Once again, I can't exactly calculate the point where they drop below a reasonable threshold because they've removed a majority of the unsuccessful videos, but you can see a clear trend in the ones that the brothers deem worthy to remain. With the gradual decline of their views, it appeared that there was no real way to switch up at this point. As mentioned, to survive the evolving environment of these types of videos, you either have to be a company with an abnormally high output rate or have something genuinely unique about your personality or the way that you conduct your content, and that's something XtremeGamez just did not have. However, they did have one more character to introduce to this story, and that was Jesus. Now, the brothers had always been fond of their festivities. However, on October the 29th, 2017, the lads tweeted out that anything you want in life, you can have if you believe in Jesus Christ. Now, as you probably know, I am not a man of faith. However, I take no issue with anyone who finds solace within the bounds of religion. Nonetheless, it did seem like a sudden wave of found faith that caught me off guard. After this initial tweet, to be fair to them, they did follow through with this commitment to Jesus Christ, as shown by their Twitter and Instagram.
Guys, it's time for the Bible verse of the day. Johnny, what is it? It is, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ. That is the verse, meaning pretty much what Jesus Christ does is he loves everyone and he cares for everyone. He wants the best for everyone. So that's what he's saying. In your mindset with one another, with your friends, with your family, with anyone, just a random person on the street, have that same mindset, have that same love, have that same passion for everyone you meet, and everything will be really awesome. You'll always have a good feeling in your heart. So that was Philippines chapter 2 verse 5. We love you all so much, and honestly guys, you guys have been giving us some really good comments and some great feedback. We love you guys so much. Have an awesome day, have an awesome night, and we'll speak to you guys again tomorrow. Peace!
That's all well and good, but I think it's pronounced Philippians rather than Philippines. There's a difference between the sovereign state and the New Testament book. Anyhow, pronunciation aside, their commitment to Jesus Christ without necessary explanation certainly came as a surprise. But hey, maybe they were always passionate about Christ and just felt they could be more open about it with their audience. After all, who am I to take it away from them? However, there was one thing bouncing around in my head that just left me with a lingering suspicion. Although many find positive meaning in Christianity, there is a darker side to the idea of organized religion. Because its validity relies on one's own perception of belief, there are a lot of individuals who will use this element of Christianity and the connection that they have with it as an element of binding loyalty. This has been most often observed with maybe some of the more celebrity American preachers, some of whom have been exposed for preaching modesty while indulging in fairly lavish behaviors themselves. What happens is that basically people promote themselves as so holy that people must think that they can do no wrong, and then when they commit wrong and some people may call them out, they use the notion of Christianity to frame themselves as being unfairly persecuted. Now, I highly doubt the lads were necessarily looking at it from that perspective, but one of these genres there does seem to be a real lack of strongly Christian individuals is YouTube. I'm not referring to softly spiritual individuals or even people who may identify with the Christian religion, but those who preach it with the sort of fervor that these lads do. Some people in this genre even receive a decent amount of stigma, and some of that, I'd argue, is hard to justify. I don't know why the lads made this sudden change, but honestly, it felt out of place. Not because I don't think you can be Christian on concept, but because I didn't feel it fit into the way that they behaved. And you know, maybe that's just me, but I guess I don't see the preaching of deep Christian principles as completely congruent with the content that they viewed as marketable. And maybe that's my more judgmental side coming into play. I know there's nothing specifically in the Bible about clickbait. Ultimately, when going through this stage, although I have my own personal feelings, if Christianity is something that they want to promote to their audience, then that is fair enough. They did start promoting Christianity as a concept before their overwhelming success, even if it was just with the occasional tweet. The actual Instagram videos that I showed you there were from around February in 2018, which was just under a month after they had their last multi-million view video, the 24-hour escape room.
No way. Don't do that.
And you know what? This tape is impenetrable.
What?
You know what that means?
I don't believe that.
You know what that means?
What?
You can't break it.
I don't believe that.
Well, believe it.
I don't believe that. I'm gonna break out, you know that, right?
Believe it.
I'm hungry. It's lunchtime and I haven't eaten. Are you gonna get me some
You should
food?
have thought of that before you tried to rob a joint. Let me see if this stuff's really rip-proof.
I'd ask how these videos received so many likes, but then I realized that there was another giveaway at the start, so who cares? However, there was a lingering suspicion that to me there was a deeper meaning to their Christianity, and that was about to be exercised. The thing is, whether the lads were genuinely Christian or not, and they may well be, there is a unique appeal to be a YouTuber who openly preaches their belief in God. Once again, it promotes a level of loyalty. In a way, to me, it seemed like a reformulated approach of the giveaways. It was a way to increase people's commitment to you without offering anything additional of value in the actual content. Because, honestly, this is not really what I consider high quality.
What is this?
I didn't try and break it. No, I didn't try and escape.
How did this happen?
I didn't do it.
This is impenetrable.
Now, with that said, there are many risks to promoting a specific religious doctrine. You may alienate significant portions of your audience, those who may identify with other religions or no religion at all. However, it's important to note that the preaching that we observed was pretty much confined to their Instagram and Twitter, which is where you'd find their more committed audience anyway. I feel this was a tactical decision as they were aware of the risk that inserting that into every video would ensue. To me, it seemed like a way to try and gain a commitment from fans who sought out their personas more passionately than the surface level audience. I don't know if the brothers understand this, but a key part of videos performing well is click-through rate, also known as CTR. Now, the problem is that if you have a large dead channel, the audiences maybe advertise the video when you upload it, but when none of them click it, YouTube will probably decide that it's not worth promoting much further. By creating a committed audience on social media, they could increase CTR of the video at the start and boost it to additional audiences who may be drawn in by their regular giveaway formula. However, one thing that they really didn't take into account was the fact that the proportion of committed fans was astronomically low. For a 4 million subscriber channel to have 13k followers on Twitter is embarrassing, especially given the volume that they posted on there. I think they were always trying to add a depth and commitment that they themselves couldn't bring to the table, and when people recognized that, they moved on, and that couldn't have felt good. I don't think it's easy for any creator to realize that their channel isn't what it used to be. There are very few creators who can maintain the spotlight for an extended length of time, and even some of the larger stars have fallen rather hard. And when people do fall, there there are many different ways to cope with it. You could quit YouTube and try and find another career. You could start a new channel or change brands, or you could just accept that you'll never be quite where you were and just make content for the reduced audience. Of course, the brothers took none of these options, but maybe they didn't have the time to consider these options because before they could come to terms with this, they had something else, much more horrific to come to terms with. In a video called "We're Quitting YouTube Because We're Dying," they open up about these struggles.
And it's just hit a point where we literally can't do it anymore. And it's sad because this is what we love doing. This is what we love doing so much. And our bodies literally can't do it anymore. I know a lot of you guys are probably wondering right now what we're talking about. But pretty much, we're both really sick. And this could be the last video that we have.
Oh no, what exactly is happening?
I've been fighting this kidney disease now for literally 4 years. And it's finally got the best of me. I can't literally fight it anymore. I'm holding 16 kilos of fluid in my body. And when I say fluid, it's literally because my kidneys can't filter my fluid out anymore. And you know how painful it is to be locked inside your own body with all this fluid that you can't physically move, you can't eat, you're not hungry. No matter what you do, you can't eat, you're not hungry at all. My body's literally at the end.
It appears that Jonathan's kidney disease has returned in a much more aggressive fashion, and that now he is suffering from excessive amounts of fluid buildup, which is affecting every aspect of his life. But it doesn't stop there, as apparently Thomas has also been suffering too.
And every single day I wake up, it's like just absolute vertigo. And if you guys don't know what vertigo is, it's like dizziness. You know when you're on a roller coaster, you get off and everything's spinning, the world is spinning. Imagine that happening to you every single day for the entire duration of the day, and it's just like on, off, on, off, on, off, and you just keep getting dizzy every single day for 4 years. That's kind of what's happened. Well, that is what's happened to me. And then you get acne, and then your stomach's always hurting, you vomit, and it's just like you kind of can't live.
Of absolute vertigo. All right.
You feel like you're in a box and you can't escape. Your mind goes insane. You can't breathe. You just get so tight and worn out, and it's just like you kind of wish you could just put yourself to sleep forever, sort of thing. But obviously there's no way to do that.
This did not appear to be good, and given their medical conditions, it was very understandable that they would not want to continue pursuing their YouTube careers. It was obviously just highly unfortunate that this coincided with a decrease in views, and they were, of course, legitimately dying. However, like the true prophets they were, they had one more important announcement to make.
Guys, we want to say a serious thank you to every single person that's watched our videos. Seriously, all you guys out there, we love you so much. And we want you to know 2 things. First thing is we want to give back to you guys. Every single one of you, we're going to hold a huge giveaway right now. We're going to give away 2 iPhone X's, 2 of them. We're literally going to give away 2 of them. That's how much we love you guys. And all you got to do is literally like this video, turn on notifications on our channel, and subscribe. And that's it. And you're entered into the giveaway. We're giving one last giveaway just because we seriously want to give back, because we honestly love you all so much. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we want you to know Jesus Christ loves you too.
Wow. Give them a round of applause. It was a moment of true selflessness. These individuals, dying of their ailments, found it in their hearts to once more give back to a community that has supported them. It's a sort of generosity that just brings you to tears. You love to see it. However, if you were watching the video and became slightly suspicious, then you know what? You might have justified reason, because they go into depth regarding their suffering, and it just becomes a bit implausible.
Imagine for 4 years you're feeling sick, dizzy, vomiting, and your stomach feels like it's practically a volcano. And you go to doctor after doctor, hospital after hospital, and they all keep telling you there's nothing wrong with you. That's what's happened to me.
In fact, if they were suffering to the extent that they were, how come they've had the strength to fly all the way to America? How did any airline let them do that without them acquiring some special permission? They then must have recorded and edited and subsequently uploaded this video, not looking particularly different to any of their other videos. In fact, if they'd been suffering so badly over the months prior, what made them so capable to record multiple videos often? We'd seen very little symptoms demonstrated on screen, and although a person would obviously avoid showing those symptoms, the frequency of their uploads suggested that they would have struggled if this illness was as severe as they framed it. But they had one more hope.
We've got this one doctor, and we've done a lot of we've been researching literally for hours on end to try and figure out how we're going to get better. And we found this one man by the name of Dr. John Bergman, and he's our last hope. He's literally our last chance. He's our last chance at being us again. He's our last chance at living again.
Well, two more hopes.
With the power of you guys, with the power of us, and the power of Jesus Christ, and God, we'll be able to do this, I think. So right now, all you guys watching this video, we want to ask one thing from you guys, is that you close your eyes and you make a prayer for us through the name of Jesus Christ. Because if you guys do that for us, I know we'll get better, and I know we'll heal.
Ah. With the upload of the video, there was an outpouring of support and sympathy from all sorts of audiences, although once again the record on the video is quite unclear. We do know that after upload they were receiving a lot of likes and comments that seemed to be believing in their nature. This screenshot shows that their like-dislike ratio was around 95% at that point. It was a video that would generate that sort of support, particularly from audiences who may have become acquainted with them in previous videos. If they're naive enough to be roped in by the giveaways and clickbait, then someone talking to them about dying is probably just as believable, particularly considering that many people would be hesitant to call them out. Telling someone who might be going through an excessive amount of suffering that they're faking it or exaggerating it might be sketchy, and you wouldn't want to aggrieve someone already suffering like that. However, not everyone conforms to that formula. In fact, there's always one person who doesn't. The commentator. In this instance, the bold individual who shed the most light onto this was Leon Lush. Although he was rather sensitive to the possibility that these gentlemen may be suffering from some sort of illness, he decided to take the side of skepticism, especially given the very ham-fisted giveaway.
A giveaway in your We're Dying video? Where people have to like and subscribe and turn notifications on to stay updated and see if they won the giveaway? In your We're Fucking Dying video? I'll tell you what, it's a good thing I'm a detective, because this is a red flag right here. This is a fucking red mother... This flag is redder. I just cannot.
It was interesting because I had watched so many XtremeGamez videos at that point that although the giveaway would be rightfully viewed as inappropriate by many people, I was just numb to it. And I knew that even if they were genuinely dying, they probably still do this thing regardless. However, for many viewers, particularly the more commentary-oriented ones, this was a tell-all sign these guys weren't being the most honest. The more obvious point for me was that if these guys were planning to quit YouTube because they were dying, then they wouldn't care if people subscribed to their channel. As noted earlier, subscriptions are not an accurate way to measure entry into these competitions, as many people don't have their subscriptions public, and the reason to increase subscriptions is therefore completely self-motivated. But if they were dying, there would be no motivation to do that. The confusion was furthered when the lads updated the timeline by making this video in which he performed a cover of Photograph by Ed Sheeran, which I know will be copyright claimed if I play, so nice bait lads, I'm not falling for it. Nonetheless, the tone of this video is pretty dramatic.
Guys, the doctor just told us Johnny's got 4 weeks to live. He doesn't deserve this.
But I of course understand why you'd be so upset given the dire circumstances. So yes, he's dying, but suddenly they're sat at a lovely Riviera promoting another giveaway. And this time, the doctor's involved.
We also want you guys to know that the doctor that we're going to right now, we found him from YouTube, so we want you guys to check out his YouTube channel and subscribe to him. If you subscribe to his channel, you're gonna double your chances at winning this giveaway.
So who is this doctor? The doctor's name is John Bergman. He is a chiropractor. Now I don't want to decry chiropractors because I do actually know a fair few people in my life who have been significantly helped by them. In fact, I think I might need to take a trip to one eventually myself. However, I would stress that if you are dying of kidney failure, a chiropractor probably will not cure you. The fact also stands for severe vertigo, and given the severity of their illnesses, I'm just concerned they were completely unaccompanied in this journey to America. I mean, it all seems a little far-fetched. The point is not that they were not ill, but that they were clearly not dying, and that in both of their instances, the video stating that, one of them may have 4 weeks left to live seemed ridiculous and manipulative. Why would they do this? Well, the first reason is one that I believe is fairly easy to state. Views. As noted at the start of the video, we tend to follow people's battles with illness quite closely, and we like to show our support and feel like we're making a difference. Therefore, these things generate a lot of attention. Secondly, well, subscriber loyalty. Once again, these creators are trying to create a connection with their audience on the basis of experiences that they are going through, rather than anything actually relating to their personality. The thing is that any regular conduct that is morally justifiable to make videos about probably has already made videos on them, and probably better videos, and therefore these creators needed to push the boundaries in a way that most people wouldn't. In fact, this development ties quite nicely into their previous content, which was also based around doing what people were not prepared to do. It's just the reasons that most people weren't prepared to do it are quite different this time round. The third reason is because, as mentioned earlier, people are much more hesitant to call people who may be faking these things out in case they were wrong. This meant that there was a higher chance of them getting away with this. If people did call them out, well, how dare you? You could drive them to suicide.
Now, I know that a lot of you guys would be saying that you can't die from this, but you can. How many people have died from depression? How many people have died from anxiety and stress? It just pushes you to a point when everyone's telling you that you're not telling the truth. It pushes you to a point in your mental state where you can just suicide, you can do anything. And honestly, I'm not the kind of person that would suicide because I have Jesus Christ in my life. I would never suicide no matter what pain I'm ever going through. Suicide is never the option, but I'm just saying that that is the point where it was getting to, and my mental state was not stable at all from this sickness.
And the other point that they continued to push was Dr. Bergman.
All you gotta do to enter this giveaway is subscribe to Dr. Bergman, because we want you guys not only to enter a giveaway that you could win an awesome iPhone, but you will also learn the truth about health. Because he knows every single answer to the sickness. He knows a cure to cancer. He knows a cure to liver disease. He knows a cure to kidney disease. He knows a cure to everything. You guys are acting like he's just a chiropractor, but trust me, he is much more than a chiropractor. He is a genius. He knows everything to do with healing the human body. So we urge you right now, go subscribe to him. Go click his videos because he knows the truth.
Trust us, guys.
I'm not entirely sure why they did this. Maybe they had some agreement with the doctor. But then pushing the narrative that actually Dr. John Bergman could cure any illness may have appeared funny to us. But it actually could have been quite sinister. Let's talk about that more. I don't know what the alternative timeline was for these creators, prior to people like Leon Lush throwing a spanner in the works, but by the end of the response video, I came to the conclusion that whatever was going on was some kind of scam.
And for the people that have posted videos about them having a sick loved one, or they're sick themselves and that it's so hard to go through, we know what that's like. We truly do. So that's why we're doing this video today. Not just to prove to you guys that we are sick and we've gone through this pain for 4 years, but we're gonna show you guys a way out to healing any sickness and any problem that is wrong with your body. But the proof is in the pudding, so we're gonna prove it to you guys in this video. We know you guys know the truth. We know you guys believe in us. We know you guys know what is actually going on with our bodies and with our lives, and we're gonna keep filling you guys in as much as possible. Honestly, Dr. Bergman is starting to show some crazy improvement on our bodies. We're going to him 3 times a day, every single day, working on ourselves, trying to get ourselves fixed and healed.
And a scam is a strong word, but at the end of the day, they were promoting this chiropractor as the individual who could cure all these illnesses, when that sort of statement is blatantly false. And it's easy to point at them and laugh at their complete ignorance in these statements, but those statements were made when they were under a lot of scrutiny and pressure. If no one had really challenged them and they had exercised their significant influence over a fairly gullible fan base, they could have spread some legitimately harmful messages. I don't doubt that there may be some legitimate illness that Jonathan may be encountering, and the evidence that there are some symptoms is very clear, but that does not suffice for the argument that you are making, which is much more preachy and radical. You are not just claiming that you are dying, you are promoting general doubt of a system, albeit not perfect, that has done a lot of good for many people, while promoting this single individual as some sort of miracle worker. I also thought it was funny that they would have agreed to go on an interview with Keemstar, but under the premise that they would know the questions before, which obviously didn't come to a head because they had no confidence in their narrative under further scrutiny, especially live. When people are suffering from an illness, they may become desperate. They are definitely vulnerable, particularly when looking for possible cures. Now, as said, during the first video, I've become so numb to their giveaways that they didn't even seem out of place in this much more sensitive content. In the 2-year-old video where they talk about Jonathan's kidney condition, they do exactly the same thing. Who else will be completely used to XtremeGamez' type of content? The core audience, the fan base, the people who actually choose to click on every video. What happens when they hear these two guys talking about how they're dying, and how their last hope is this chiropractor in California? And I'm not saying that an overwhelming number of people would be influenced by this sort of propaganda, which is what it is. But we've all been in situations where we've been looking for some sort of miracle, and whether knowingly or not, they have asserted to provide an answer to that. In the original video, this message was more subtle, but under pressure they cracked. That sounded like a pair of rather unhinged individuals. It is a scam. That's what it is. As noted, they also integrated the giveaway with subscription to Dr. John Bergsman's channel, which once again is extremely impractical for multiple reasons, and something that a channel that size would not be able to organize, especially if they were dying. I know many people may be more focused on the aspect that they were trying to gain subs from a video in which they talk about their impending death through giveaways, but I'm more annoyed at the fact that they emotionally manipulated people into thinking that they were about to die and then presented the solution as this miracle doctor who you should all subscribe to. It's unhealthy and pretty dangerous. I feel that if uninterrupted, they probably would have followed this treatment through, claimed to have been cured, and then used that emotional victory to try and sell the practice as further credibility for this chiropractor, as well as winning over all these fans who were ardently rooting for them to come through. I can't tell you if this plan would have worked. To be honest, I'm kind of skeptical, but it was good that people did actually step in and say something and actually point out what was wrong. Also, to add on to my two narratives here, the other character that has made appearances in these videos was our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Before we literally prove anything to anyone, what we want to say first of all is we forgive every single one of you guys that has created a hate video on us. Every single comment, every single thing that any of you have said, we forgive you, because that's what Jesus Christ would do. He would forgive you. He would forgive you no matter what you've done to him if you go to him for forgiveness. And that's exactly what we're going to do to you guys, because Jesus Christ lives inside of us. And we forgive every single person that's created hate on us.
However, it wasn't until 2 months later when they made their post-recovery video that the truth becomes clear. Now, this is the one video that I do not actually have the original copy of, so I'll just use the Leon Lush reaction video to both summarize exactly how I feel about their rhetoric and suitably deliver the tone of the video.
The person that has been there all this time that we should have had our faith in, not doctors, not specialists, not anyone of this world, the person that we have put our faith into, his name is Jesus Christ. Now that is what we have done just recently. We have literally put our sicknesses into Jesus Christ's hands. And as you guys know, if you've read the Bible, if you know anything about Jesus, he is a healer. He can heal you because he is the Son of God. He can do miracles and literally do whatever he wants. So we have put our faith in him, and I tell you right now, yes, I might still have a little bit of edema left, but I feel no fear.
It was in fact Jesus. Jesus healed them. Jesus was the person all along. In fact, they didn't need any doctors at all. After all, those are the same doctors who had told Thomas that there was in fact nothing wrong with him. The only authority that you should trust is Jesus, and Jesus has made the conscious decision to heal those suffering gentlemen. Praise the Lord and his random healings of vertigo through California chiropractors. Now, as mentioned, the lads have been promoting Christianity for a while, but here's one of the times where it seems to have been used for a less than benign purpose. Sometimes when when people are down, bringing religion into their lives can legitimately help them. And I might even go as far to say the emotional uplift that religion can provide for some people might aid people's fight against certain illnesses. However, to me, it seems like it's been used as a scapegoat here, as a way to explain how they have managed to heal themselves, and definitely to try and create a connection with the Christian crowd, who will brand this as some miracle healing and as proof that God does in fact exist. They have created this perfect arc where they were all going to die. They needed all this support, and when they had it, they made a miraculous recovery, thanks to Dr. John Bergman and Jesus Christ. Amen. In the video, they also state that their DMs are open on Instagram, and they're there to spread the message of God. And if you are interested, you should reach out to them. This was basically a way of reaching out to the right audience who may be brought into this story. And believe me, although few and far between, they're definitely out there. Johnny and Tommy, you guys are amazing people, and for those of you who think they're pretending to be sick, screw you, because these guys are strong believers in Christ and they help me get through a lot. I know I can go to them whenever I need them. Thank you. Now, once again, if they're helping people, I can't take that away from them. But overall, as a greater cultural effect, I class these escapades as hope baiting. It's basically telling people that there are all these solutions that can be found in places that they need to just put their faith in. This problem-solving entity. I feel that they are basically trying to couple themselves to that notion of hope with the intention of winning back an audience from the brink, which, as Leon notes, wasn't the most hopeful.
But it does seem awfully convenient, you know what I mean? 8 weeks ago, we were dying, definitely. We're not lying about that. We were gonna die. Vertigo, leaky gut, dead. JC hooked it up, bro. JC came through in the clutch. Not dead anymore. In fact, we're feeling great. Be sure to like and subscribe.
But was it all that simple? Was it just two guys using a load of shit to try and keep their channel afloat? Or were they a bit more invested in it than I thought? Let's take a look back and try to come to a conclusion. I mean, the one point in their favor is that they started preaching about their closeness to Jesus during their channel high point, and therefore it seems unlikely that they just had conjured up this belief of Jesus for the sake of views. Maybe they did view their success as a miracle. I mean, I can understand why. I wouldn't put it down to Jesus though, I'd put it down to some rather crafty clickbait, which I'm not sure Jesus would approve of, to be honest, though I haven't spoken to him so I can't confirm. Looking back at their history, they've really done anything to succeed, whether that was completely transforming their channel branding to a Pokemon channel and then basically acting like that phase never happened. The only thing that remained remotely consistent was their giveaways, and in effect I can understand why. And this is the strange thing, although they changed their content in and out, they clearly never really identified the content with the success. They identified the giveaways because the giveaways were what provided them these subscriptions. The content was just filler to them, and the reason that I think they look at it from that perspective is because of how they use the Christian faith. When someone's channel begins to fail, they grip onto a formula more tightly. They try and use the same tricks to a greater extent. And you can see this with the lads, both in their view of religion and giveaways. These are the only two things that seem to increase in their intensity when their channels begin to fail. They put their success in giveaways and Jesus. So when it begins to fall flat, they create a greater investment in it. Honestly, if they thought they could get away with crediting giveaways for saving their lives, then they probably would. That's exactly why their channel died, even if they haven't. If you want to keep people watching, you need to have faith in your content, not concepts that are mostly separate to what you're creating. Careers are seldom built on gimmicks. They're built on fleshed out characters who we appreciate not because of what happens to them, but because of how they react to their environments and evolve. Someone fighting a life-threatening illness can be extremely riveting, but only because of how they respond to the battle that they are fighting. It's about character, and I guarantee that even if they had sold it to people, they wouldn't have revived their channel because they didn't show the character of someone who was genuinely going through those struggles. They may have found Jesus, but they haven't found the moral compass that many religious individuals would argue should come with him. It's the worst brand of religious exploitation. Jesus is the ultimate authority, and he helped us heal because he did. It's bizarre. It's a con. They're trying to connect people like that, and I just do not stand. And I'm no fan of religion, but I accept that on principle, it has a moral compass. And I don't believe there's any way for these guys to remain inside the Christian moral compass given the way that they have behaved, which leads me to believe that they're moral licensors, people who basically identify with these causes to make themselves feel better about not necessarily practicing what they preach. Maybe they're trying to justify it to themselves as well, but really looking at it from a removed perspective, it could have been much worse than it was. People called it out early and therefore the dissemination of a potentially harmful doctrine was suppressed, but they still have a responsibility for the intent, which they retained, as shown by their response video.
Trust us, guys.
They have removed these videos since. As said, they seem to enjoy removing content, but they haven't formally commented on it. If they do regret it, well, okay, it's not that I'm not willing to hear them out. In the instance that they were just really invested in this treatment, which I feel is unlikely, maybe they're not bad people. But what they did was excessively reckless and irrational considering their fanbase, and how impressionable many of them seemed at the time. You don't deserve to have that responsibility given the possible repercussions. That fanbase was built from the start on giveaways, whether they were giving away a Clash of Clans account or an iPhone. You need to have some beggar's belief to sign up to a channel for that. And given that to me, they seem to be convinced that the giveaways are a catch to the channel. They had to know the audience that they were trying to rope in with a much more consequential narrative. Now, normally this would be the part where I talk about how their channel has died due to these escapades, but also due to the fact that they could not evolve, which seemed to be a constant block for them. However, ironically, and maybe even depressingly, they've revived their channel very recently, and that is the problem with YouTube. There will be people who just don't know, especially when you make flavorless content. That was the problem with someone like Austin Jones, even though, of course, that was much more serious. Very briefly, after YouTube introduced abbreviated subscriber counts, you can see the ugly, rounded up number jump up in a way that it hasn't for maybe over a year at least. Basically, what they're doing now is a rip-off of Morg content. I mean, they even put Morgs in the tags of their videos. And given that Morgs is a rip-off of like 5 other YouTubers, it's hard to really argue that they've learned anything. They're just following the paper trail.
What's in this? I'm genuinely shocked. I don't know what's in either of these. It's like it's Christmas before Christmas. Johnny, what is next? It's your turn! Alright, here we go then. No! It's a squid! That's no chances. No!
Not the most charismatic, although if they're not selling miracle cures to gullible audiences, I guess it's an improvement. Asking them to make decent content would probably be a step too far. I still feel that their behavior will be fresh in some people's memories, given how forgettable they are for basically anything else, and they will never immortalize themselves in a way that other individuals can because they coast on clickbait alone. And the fact that one video can get over 1 million views back to back with another video that barely cracks 50,000 is at least somewhat reassuring. However, their lack of personality is probably why they've had a spike in success again. Because they're so damn forgettable, people probably forgot this whole charade, especially when they erased the history. Nonetheless, for the first time ever, they seem to have let go of old habits. There are no giveaways, and they may have finally clocked that successful content is not dependent on the number of giveaways you do. Maybe they just had to let go, which is something that they never could do before.
If you want to win an iPhone 11, we might be giving one away.
Oh, never mind. Wait. We might be giving one away?
Yes, an iPhone 11.
They've really outdone themselves this time. I think on that bombshell, it's best to conclude. XtremeGamez' breakdown was strange in a way that it was a sign of a dying channel trying to use old techniques to an insane extent, but also the attempt of a channel to understand what that means in the most tasteless way possible. They had constantly tried to retain the aspects of a channel with a greater connection with their fans, but their genre will never permit that. They will never be those sorts of creators. Even if they die, they have to understand the humanity behind individuals and why we care about their lives. If you build your career on clickbait, we will never know enough about who you truly are to understand how you interpret your own struggles, and that's something XtremeGamez could never really comprehend, how to market their own humanity. And it seems they've come to terms with it and are now as successful as ever. It's just a shame that the journey to that destination has been pretty manipulative and destructive. I pray to God it was worth it. So yes, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed. It was an interesting one to script, certainly a bit longer than I anticipated, but that's what happens sometimes. I really want to give a big shout out to the editors. They've done a fantastic job, I am sure, and I would not have it any other way. I would also like to give a big thanks to my Patreons, $10 Patreons on the screen right now. Give a special thanks to my $50 Patreons, Some Hullabaloo, The Spectre Angel, Bowright, Nico Deschamps, Sarah Elizabeth and Caroline, and a very special thanks to my $100 Patreons, Brandon, Adam Michael, and Christopher Karras. My Twitter is @TheRightOpinion, my Facebook, The Right Opinion Official, and my Discord. They're all linked in the pinned comment. And if you have any other questions, then feel free to hit me up there. I hope you're having a wonderful day. My day is going fairly average, but hopefully something interesting can happen in my life soon enough. I know I've been waiting long enough. Anyhow, I don't really have much to add, so I'll leave it here. I'm The Right Opinion, and I will see you in the next one.